Hi, I'm Artemis,
And I'm Hannah.
and welcome back to MakeShift Podcast. So, today's episode is going to be all about waiting rooms, which we already touched on, and in particular, this idea of the base reality that I came up with, which is a waiting room. And then eventually we'll get into Shifter Netflix, which is something else that we came up with, which is I think like a really brilliant idea. And I think other shifters kind of do this too, but maybe not in the same way. Or Hannah came up with the term and I came up with the concept, and
Mhm.
it's our thing now. So we already talked about waiting rooms. Hannah, do you want to just redefine that for people?
Sure. So a waiting room, in our opinion, is basically like a pocket dimension. The easiest way that I can explain it is like the Citadel at the end of time in the Loki series. You know, that's just what I have to say about that. It basically is a place where you can go from anywhere from there, right? Like you can pretty
Yeah,
much go to any
generally
reality
we'll use it.
from your waiting room, but you can
I mean,
also
you can
use your
do that from anywhere, from any reality anyway, but people often will use waiting rooms as tools to get to other realities.
That's how I'm using mine at least. So,
Yeah, me too.
yeah.
So that leads me into the base reality, which I'm pretty sure I invented.
Yes.
And that's Well, okay, so the term base reality, I think, means just wherever you're anchored, but I specifically use base reality to talk about this one specific kind of waiting room that I have, which is kind of like, I mean, it's more of an expanded waiting room. Oftentimes, waiting rooms will be very small, so it won't be an entire reality. It will be more like a room or maybe a house. So mine is a very, very large house that doesn't necessarily follow regular laws of physics. There are I have lots of different rooms that I've scripted into this, but I think that getting to these rooms won't make sense in terms of physically where they would be located in a house.
Mhm.
So it doesn't follow the laws of physics at all. And also there are portals to like there's a portal that connects to your waiting room so that we can visit each other, and to if there's other people from this reality or other realities that we decide we want to be able to meet each other in a pocket dimension, then that would also exist there. But basically, for me, this is what I've decided. And anyone that I interact with in this reality, in my base reality, has also shifted to that reality. Like nobody exists there as part of that reality initially. Everyone has shifted there, so we can all talk about shifting together. And there's also a room that's just portals to any DR that I want to go to, and something that I specifically scripted because I have trouble making decisions. And so this room, the doors will basically light up when it's a good time for me to shift to a particular place.
That's cool.
So that it can give me basically the entire reality is sort of linked to my subconscious in a way,
Yeah.
so that I know where is a good place for me to shift to, but maybe not consciously, especially because consciously I have a hard time making decisions. So I might be like, I just need a decision to be made for me because it's too stressful for me to try to pick. And so a door will glow, or maybe a few doors will be glowing, and I can, make a smaller decision, between
Yeah.
two rather than between 50 or whatever, right? So that's a large part of that DR, is that it's a way for me to have access to lots of other realities. And if there's a place that's like n- not the right place for me to shift to at that time, because I feel like I have lots of realities that are just maybe it's not time yet, those will be sort of like closed down, but they'll be there so I can see them. And every reality I've ever thought of is here because I forget things a lot. So maybe I've wanted to shift somewhere but forgot to write it down, and now I've forgotten that I wanted to shift there.
Yeah.
That door will just be there because
Yeah.
again, it's connected to my subconscious. And oh, I was saying that it's larger than waiting rooms generally are. There's like definitely like grounds attached to it and possibly a little town. So it's much large. It's not a whole world, but it's larger than just a room or a house.
Right, which is why I think waiting rooms are pocket dimensions, because that's how that works. It's
Mhm.
connected directly to your subconscious. So no matter what version of you from any reality, like your subconscious is what drives that pocket dimension, and how big or small it is, how dynamic it is, what's
Yeah.
available, that kind of stuff. That's why physics doesn't exist. And that's why I personally view them as pocket dimensions, because I was like, yeah, that makes it's like the hub for your like main conscious, like that's where your consciousness can always go no matter what reality.
Yeah. And the laws of physics can be the same if you want them to be. It's
Yeah,
just
no, no, no.
for me personally,
Magic.
I think I'm not going to say they don't exist. I just think the laws of physics are different.
See, and I just think when magic is involved, like there's just a whole different set of laws that we just don't understand. And that's why it's literally magic. So it's like, yes, I might not have this because in my waiting room is basically a giant magic mansion built into the mountain. So that just means that anytime I think of something that I want, like a new DR or something, a new room will appear in the hallway, but it's always expanding, and yet it doesn't actually seem like it's always expanding because it's magic.
Yeah.
And that's how that works. And that's why you can always create things the way that you want to in your waiting room, because it is that pocket dimension that is driven solely by your consciousness. Like,
Yeah.
that's how it made the most sense to me, because I didn't believe in waiting rooms literally until August, because I could not wrap my head around them, because it just boggles my mind so much, and I'm a really logical person. And so like, which is ironic, given the fact that we are sitting here making this podcast and I am saying these things that kind of I feel like we just need to take a moment to say that, like, I'm literally I went to school for science. Like, I have a bachelor of science. Like, so waiting rooms were really hard for me to like grasp, even with the understanding of shifting. But with
Mm.
them being pocket dimensions, that's the way that it made the most sense to me. But that doesn't necessarily mean that is how it is. That's just in our opinion what the waiting rooms are. And
And
as
how they work
somebody,
for us.
yeah, and how they work for us. And like, that's what made it make the most sense to me. I'm like, yeah, of course I can make a room a new room that I open the door and it takes me into my next DR, even if I haven't even thought of that DR yet, because it's connected to my subconscious. My consciousness is literally creating it as I like, boom,
Mhm.
access.
Yeah, definitely. So this came around for me because this I created this initially because people were talking about waiting rooms as being easier to get to as a way to transition to your DR. And so I thought, okay, I'll make this waiting room and I will be able to have doors to all of my DRs from here. But then I also sort of was thinking, well, what if? So the other thing that was going on at this time was I had started having a lot of digestive issues and my body was reacting badly to things, but I am a huge food lover and food is actually kind of a sensory stim for me. Eating food and like taste is a big stim for me and I crave it all the time, but I wasn't able to eat all the things I wanted to because my body was not reacting well to certain kinds of food and these were foods that I loved. And so I was very excited about the idea of before I go to wherever I want to go in this waiting room, I'm just going to eat like an amazing breakfast of all the things that I want to eat. And I'm not going to feel sick afterwards.
Yeah.
And so then that kind of, I started having other ideas about things that could exist in this waiting room that at this point was still just a transition between this reality and other realities. Like I came up with the idea of, I've heard people say that it's hard to integrate back into various realities if you've been away for a long time. So I thought, okay, well, what if this reality will give me sort of like here's a refresher on what was going on, all the important things that were going on that you need to remember, that you need to know for going back into this reality. And at that time, I had scripted that it would show up on a screen, but I've actually redecided that it'll just pop up in my head because I think that will make it even easier for me to reintegrate back into another reality is to have the information for like basically I'll have all the memories of like what happened yesterday and also all the most important points just pop up in my head before I reshift there. So that will, I think, make that easier. So, and more things started coming in, and I started thinking about, well, what if I could have And really this was starting to become like an autistic safe space for me, was what was happening here. I was like, I'm not gonna have to use any spoons. I'm gonna be able to relax. I'm gonna have all the TV shows that I want to watch. Because I really felt like I needed a space to hyper focus on TV shows or books or whatever, and I just didn't have the time in this reality. And I was like, I'm just gonna go to another reality and watch them. And then I thought, wait, but what if they were even better versions than the ones that exist in this reality? Like, what if they're the whatever version of this story I would enjoy the most is the version that exists in this reality? What if there's actually multiple versions of this story that exist in this reality and I can read them all and compare them? I started getting so excited about this. So more and more things started popping in as parts of this reality, to the point where it really started to seem like a place in and of itself that I wanted to go to, not just a place I wanted to go to on my way somewhere else. And then it started to became the main place I was shifting to. I was more interested in this place than Hogwarts or anywhere else I wanted to go. I was like, no, I want to go to this. This is now my base reality. This is the place I want to go to. This is also the place I want to return to and retreat to, even after shifting to my original reality, because I need this space to recuperate from existing in other realities. This is basically, it's a little pocket dimension where all I have to do is exist. So that's what this became for me. And then I decided, what if there's other people in this reality? But the most important part is they only show up when I have the spoons for it.
Yeah.
So things just the way, again, time doesn't really exist. So the way things end up working there, people interact in this reality only when both of them are actually interested in interacting, so nobody feels awkward about it. And it's linked to my subconscious, so that always works out. And it's so not only is it connected to my subconscious, but it's very much like the room of requirement from Harry Potter. I call it my waiting room of requirement because I think I like
very
puns.
clever.
Actually, that's not a pun, but it is a play on words. So I like that. And it's also kind of like Casita from Encanto, where it's not, I don't want to say it's sentient, but it's definitely parts of the house, like food, like plates will slide over to me and stuff like that, so that I don't have to use spoons to go make food. The food will just make itself, unless I feel like I want to go make the food, and then I'll go do that, because sometimes I enjoy cooking. But sometimes I don't have the spoons to make food and I just want the food to show up, and it always stays hot, because I am that person that if my food is not the right temperature, and I like things to be really hot generally. Same. If it's not the right, or if it's something that's supposed to be cold, I like it to be really cold. So if it's not the right temperature, then I will, like, I put my food in the microwave like 5 times while I'm eating it, because I need it to be the right temperature or I can't eat it. So things just stay at the perfect temperature all the time in this reality, but they don't lose any flavor from being at an extreme temperature, because that's something that also happens. Like, I need it to be hot, but sometimes when it's hot, it doesn't have as much flavor. So it's the perfect temperature, but also still has all the flavor. And I'm so excited for this. And really, I'm just shifting for the food. Like, this is the main thing. I am shifting.
Because you're a foodie.
Shifting for food. I am really big on food. I'm Armenian. Okay. Food is part. Okay, I'm really doing a bad job of the accent, but food is part of my culture. Okay. So this is my horrible impression of my mother's impression of her grandfather's Armenian accent. So this is not at all accurate. Every time I try to do an Armenian accent, it ends up sounding more Russian, which is not at all what Armenian accents sound like. But
it's giving Wanda.
That's not it at all. That's not what it sounds like. So yeah, this is like the main place I'm shifting to, and it's got everything I could ever want, and I'm super excited to just have a safe space to retreat to. Also, I have like a manifesting station there from which I script this reality. We briefly touched on how you can script this reality. It's manifesting. I mean, I don't think that you can change the past. I think if you change the past, you're going to a different reality than you came from. But
100%.
I do think you can script the future because that's what manifesting is anyway. So I have a whole station where I can manifest things into this
Yeah.
reality. And there's a list of anything I've ever thought of in this reality that I wanted to manifest that I forgot is on that list. And the best thing is that from that reality, like I won't have to do all the work that I have to do in this reality to manifest. I just push a button and it's automatically here when I
Yeah.
return. And I think it'll be easier because I think it's easier. Like the only reason manifesting is hard is because I'm making it hard for myself.
Yeah.
And I think it will be easier for myself if I think I have a reality from which I have scripted that it is possible to instantly manifest in this reality. And that will be easier for my brain to,
Yeah.
right? So, manifesting station, everything I've ever wanted to manifest, there's buttons, and I just push a button and it shows up. And I'm super excited to see how well that works.
Yeah.
And I want to do a bunch of experiments to see how much I can push the limits of what I can manifest into this reality, especially from another reality that is magical. I'm really curious about what the limits actually are and how much I can push them. So, definitely excited to do some experiments with that.
I would say my waiting room is where I plan on doing the majority of my experiments
Yeah.
for all of my shifting things. My experience in waiting rooms was that I couldn't wrap my brain around it. For some reason, confused, didn't understand them, couldn't make them make sense. I explained this to my husband before you and I even talked about them. And me and my husband talked about waiting rooms. He's like, "Well, why couldn't they?" Like my husband is so supportive of this, just by the way. But he was like, "Well, why couldn't a waiting room exist?" So we talked about all the different possibilities, and that's where I was like, "Well, if I had a waiting room, I'd probably majorly just use it in order to pull you into it and us watch Netflix. So it would be the best version of all of the TV shows and like series because we were getting so annoyed that all of the series were like we keep running out of stuff to watch because they're ended or the seasons ended or the show got canceled or we're really annoyed because good but it should be a lot better and you can tell that it could have, we just wanted
Once
a
upon
better
a time.
version. Yeah, exactly.
The
um
Swan Queen version of Once Upon a Time.
Sorry. Yes.
Version that should have existed.
Even they thought it should. They wore Swan Queen sweaters in season 3 behind the scenes and I'll never get over it. But it's fine. But when I talked to him about it, I was like, well, if I had a waiting room, then the only way I could see it happening would be that it was like some form of pocket dimension, although that's not what I called it at the time. You and I think you came up with that term, I think, or we talked about
Probably.
that term and came up with it together. But that's basically what I was saying. And I was like, so there's no reason I couldn't pull your consciousness in and we couldn't watch like TV together. And I was like, then honestly, that I should be able to bring my comfort characters in so I could bring them in and I could meet them and like it would maybe be a little bit less intimidating or we could watch what we're jumping into and then together script different things, depending on how we wanted it to be. And then I was talking about being able to pull shifting friends in because I like there's people that I would want to like hang out with and like have tea with or, go swimming, play mermaids. I want to play mermaids in the pool with you so bad.
Oh my gosh, the scripting having tea with people in the waiting room though, like I have it there's a whole tea room for because
Yes.
especially
And
because a
like,
lot of the people that I know where I live that I'm friends with are really into tea. So
yeah. And like, I wanted to have like monthly themed balls where I could pull like a bunch of different shifter friends and comfort characters and like,
oh
I
my
wanted to
god.
do these types of things. So before you and I had even talked about waiting rooms, when I was still like, I really just don't understand how they work. But if I had one, this would be my idea of what it would be. And I started just kind of like building this thing up. And then you and I started talking about, I think it was when the Get Shifty podcast started releasing and I found out about C having their little like watching their DRs or something. I think that's what got us on the topic of it. And you told me about what we ended up calling Shifter Netflix because that
Which
combines what you and like what I had already been imagining, but you had expanded it so much more that it just made sense. So I'm going to explain that. So my idea was the best version of these things because I want those with my person, but also any DR that I wanted to be in would be available for me to watch so that I could decide if I actually wanted to experience it or if it's just one of those things that I wanted to watch myself in. And then also the idea of being able to watch other people's DRs, because I have another shifting friend who lives here in Denver, um, that I has a really cool Harry Potter DR that I want to see as a movie really bad. And so that's when you then introduced your idea of Shifter Netflix, which was already combining the best version that you would want to watch with multiple different options and getting to watch yourself in DRs, but also.
Yeah, I should probably, because this is an idea that I came up with all the way back in like almost towards the beginning of my shifting journey as I was
Mhm.
creating this waiting room where I was like, okay, so I can watch all the best versions of the shows I want. I can also rewatch things that have happened in realities that I've shifted to as a movie or a show, because wouldn't that be cool? And then I can also watch, one of the first things I thought of was that I can watch things from the past in this reality, because I really wanted to watch like a dinosaur documentary that was actually realistic. I don't want to live with dinosaurs or because no,
No.
that's too much. But I do want to know, like, what colors were dinosaurs? What sounds did they make? Did they have feathers? How many feathers did they have? And not just dinosaurs, because I think my hyper obsession is more with prehistoric sea creatures specifically.
Mhm.
So that's a thing where I really want to know what prehistoric animals were like and how they acted, and not just our best guesses but what act. So I was like, I can look back in time as well and see anything that's ever happened in a reality so that I can learn about things like this that are really cool that we don't actually know about. And then also I can learn about like how the universe works and stuff, and like maybe meet, you know, my spirit guides or Greek
Yeah.
deities or whatever, like that they can exist in this reality. That's separate from the Shifter Netflix. But so I had so many ideas of different things that could be on this screen, right? One of the first things was what was happening most recently in my reality so that I can refresh my memory. But that quickly turned into all these other things in addition to that.
Mhm.
So I was like, yeah, being able to watch other people's DRs as movies with their permission,
Yeah.
of course, and being able to watch. So the other big one was there were places like I think Doctor Who and maybe also the MCU are places that I toyed with the idea of shifting to, but I think that actually shifting there might be kind of traumatizing. And I think I'm not in love with the world enough that it would be worth making changes to the plot to exist. I feel like the places that I really want to shift to are places that have worlds that are interesting. Like Harry Potter, there's this, it's an entire, like it's not just shift. If you take away the plot and the characters, there's still an entire world that exists that's completely different from this one. And so that's what's exciting about that for me. And the same is true for lots of other things like Percy Jackson and Lord of the Rings. And although I'm not shifting to Lord of the Rings, but I know there are people who do, but there are places that have entire worlds.
Mhm.
And that for me, Star Trek, right? There are places that have entire worlds that are completely different. And that's what's exciting about it for me. So there are places that I was like, I toyed with the idea of shifting there, but it might be traumatic and the world isn't interesting enough for me to change the plot.
Mhm.
But I do want to know what it would be like if I was there. So now I get to watch that as a movie. I don't
Yeah.
actually have to shift there. I can just see what it would be like if I existed in this reality. Because I don't want to be shifting to like, I know there are people who shift to places like Stranger Things, and if you can handle that, good for you. No, no, thank you. Not for me. Not for me. That is not for me. So there are certain places I think Doctor Who would be too much for me. personally, but I've always wanted to know what it would be like if I was a Doctor
Yeah.
Who companion or a Time Lord or whatever. But I can't be with Weeping Angels or Vashta Nerada. No,
No.
thank you, please. I have nightmares about those things in a reality where they don't exist. I don't want to exist in a reality where they do. So
Yep. That's how I
that's
feel.
my workaround.
Yep.
And then
That's
you named it Shifter Netflix.
Yeah, I called it Shifter Netflix because not only were we having all of these different options, but I was like, well, if we're looking at, like, say if I want to watch one of your DRs, like the Harry Potter DR where you scripted me in there, and I'm like, I want to see what I was doing during your DR. So I would literally change profiles to go to yours and be able to find what I was looking for. But then also the fact that, like, documentaries, like that's what your dinosaurs would be, is like, I like the idea of seeing historical documentaries where you're actually looking back in time. So then I was like, well, why wouldn't there be genres? So you have your documentary genre. So like, I have so many DRs where I'm like, I just want to know what the world would have been like had society been women focused from the very beginning, on equal, like, women and men being equal from the very beginning. What would our architecture look like? What kind of changes would have happened? What would health look like? Like, I want to know what that would be like, but I don't want to go live there necessarily. I just want to know what.
I do.
Well, like,
Or if
because, like,
colonialism had never been a thing.
right, like, I have a really hot take on a religious one, but we're not going to talk about that because we're not going to bring it up.
Yeah,
But
I think we have the same hot take on that.
yes, we do, and that's okay. So, but, like, there's all these things that I'm like, I just
Also,
am
I just saw your
curious.
cat in the background and
Hazy morning, she's
hi Hazy morning. Oh my
there. She
goodness.
is.
Oh, the baby.
Hello, pretty lady.
This is,
Uh,
can I just shift to your room and pet your cat?
I swear. In our waiting rooms, you can.
I know.
You just walk over and knock on my door.
Also, my kitty that passed away last year is in my waiting room. That was one of the first things, almost as soon as my shifting journey started. My kitty passed away very suddenly and unexpectedly. And
Yeah.
yeah. And so I was like, I know people often script that people wake them up when they shift to their DRs. And I think maybe I think that people have also realized that that's not always a good idea because you
I
might need
I've
time to ground
literally.
yourself. But my cat's going to be there when I shift for
Yeah.
the first time because she is grounding for me.
Yeah. Well, and that's a lot less jarring than having a comfort character wake you, or a comfort. I hate calling them comfort characters. I call them comfort people literally everywhere except when I'm on a video for some reason. And then I revert back to comfort characters, but in person I call them comfort people because to me they're people. But that's sorry. That's
Yeah.
just a really random. I'm trying to get myself in the habit of correcting myself and not trying to my little bit of masking for the public to be less hated, and I'm like, that's dumb.
We could
That's
do a
all in your
whole
brain.
video. We could do a whole video just on masking.
Oh my god. I'm sorry, that was a whole tangent. That's my
Yeah.
bad.
And also
But
not everyone has comfort characters too.
that's true, but, like, just being woken up, I feel like being woken up by anybody when you've shifted for the first time, like, would be so
Jarring.
jarring.
Yeah,
Like,
definitely.
I don't
And
like
there may
that.
be people that I want to go interact with as soon as I'm grounded, but I want to go find them
Right,
because I
exactly.
want it to be on my terms,
Yep,
except my cat.
I have
My
a
cat's going to
very
be there immediately and I'm going to be sobbing.
I have a very strong suspicion that my first fully grounded shift to our Storybrooke reality is going to be the morning after the curse broke. So that means Emma and Henry are going to be in my living room, and I'm gonna, yep. So that's why we're doing this experiment, to see when we wake up, because we have 3 different wake up scenarios that could happen.
Yeah. And
One
I
is,
think I just scripted that I'll wake up whenever you end up waking up,
mhm,
unless I need more time before the plot starts, because I feel like, especially if you're shifting to a DR where there is plot and you're keeping the plot, it might be prudent to shift there where you have like enough time before the plot starts for you to get grounded and get used to the reality.
Yep,
So if
that was the
shifting
plan.
to the morning the curse breaks for me might be things might be happening too soon. And for me, I'm not really involved in anything that's happening in season one. So shifting
Mhm.
at any point in season one for me would basically be just like, oh, I'm just here teaching dance classes and
Yep.
enjoying existing, exploring the town.
That that was the whole plan that I had initially. I was going to have like 3 to 4 months before anything with the curse breaking happened, and then my higher self was like, I know that's what you thought you wanted, but actually you need to shift closer to when the curse breaks, because you're shifting in order to have a healthy family dynamic, and that's not going to happen if the family is under a curse and they don't even know who you are. Like, you need to
Yeah.
start healing, and if you put it off, like, that's not going to help you, it's going to harm you. So I was like, well, maybe I can shift like right after Mary Margaret is proven not to have killed a woman who never was dead in the first place. Uh, the ridiculous nonsense that is ABC drama. But that's okay. And I was like, maybe that's when I shift. And then my higher self was, that's so funny. That's so funny that you think that. And I was like, oh no. So what are you saying? And it's like, well, you're probably going to shift the day after the curse breaks. And I was like, okay, we'll see what happens. So we're going to see, because I'm not scripting that. I only have scripted it's either the day of the storm episode in season one, or it's the day after Mary Margaret's "you didn't kill Catherine Nolan" party, because that's an appropriate thing to throw and tell children about in school. We're so glad you didn't kill Mrs. Nolan. God. Sorry, this is a
Well,
whole
they
also.
probably all knew already because I'm
I
sure their
know.
parents had been talking about it. So
Yep, it's a
I feel
small
like they
town.
probably came up with that themselves. That's the
No, no,
kind of
they
thing
that is
that's totally the
100% a
kind of
thing
thing
children
kids
would
do,
do.
right? That
It 100%
they think
is.
that's totally appropriate.
It
Yeah.
is. That's what makes it cute. So, but we'll see what my consciousness actually chooses, because I have a very sneaking suspicion I'm gonna wake up the day after the curse breaks, and I'm not gonna get the time that I thought I was gonna get to just be by myself.
Side note, and this will probably go in the blooper reel. The fact that we mentioned the Swan Queen version is best version, I feel like we're gonna get canceled by some people because I think so many people are obsessed with Killy.
Okay, well that's why. So what we need to clarify, I guess, maybe we can put this whole little thing at the beginning, is that I was made. Killian is only in the show with Emma because he was supposed to be
With
mine,
you, and you're Emma's twin.
and
And
and that just doesn't exist in
well,
this
okay.
reality.
If we're talking about why it happened in this reality, Hook was Killian was not even supposed to be in the show past like season 2, but he was popular with the audience and the writers
Yes.
decided to keep him in because of that. And then the audience wanted him to be with Emma, which they were also not planning to do. And so then they
Mhm.
decided to do that. And what's ironic about that is a lot of these Swan Queen haters, their one of their biggest arguments against why Swan Queen shouldn't have happened is because they don't think that the writers should cater to the audience. And I think that's the funniest thing ever, since
Yeah,
that's exactly what happened with Captain Swan. That the only reason Captain Swan exists at all, let alone being Endgame, is because the writers catered to the audience. And I'm
100%.
not saying that catering to what the audience wants is always a bad thing. Sometimes it can be a very good thing, especially because like the audience is the one consuming it. And so if the audience is happy, that's a good thing, as long as it doesn't as long as it's not bad for the story,
Yeah.
right? As long as it is works well with the story that you've created, that can be fine. But it is ironic when I do notice that people only have an issue with writers catering to audiences if the relationship that they're catering to is a queer relationship.
Yeah.
And I think that that is just an interesting thing to note. So that's a
I'll
side
I'll
note.
die on the hill that Swan Queen was best version.
Swan Queen is absolutely best version, in part because regardless of whether they have a romantic relationship or not, Emma, Regina, and Henry and their family dynamic is the heart of the show. And it was
Mhm.
always supposed to be the heart of the show.
Yeah.
And you can see that right from the very start, that their dynamic as a family is really what the whole show is about. And I think that it's beautiful that people ship all sorts of different things. And I support everybody's ships. And the fact that I don't ship something, even if it's the canon ship, does not mean that I think people shouldn't ship it or that people shouldn't love it. I think that, like, whatever makes you happy, like, your ship is beautiful no matter what your ship is. This is just like my opinion about what I think went wrong with the show.
Well,
But
it's because they made him do constant backslides instead of introducing new characters, which then negated any kind of character growth that he was constantly having, which made his relationship with Emma not seem actually fleshed out the way it needed to for how intense it became
and they
so
did the same thing with
quickly.
Rumpelstiltskin too.
No,
Yeah.
100%.
And if you have a different opinion, that's totally fine. And I love you for it. And I'm not hating on you because you like Emma and Hook. I just don't.
Yep.
That's like, I think that it was the wrong
It's just
decision.
like-
But if you think it was the right decision, that's also beautiful and like good for you. Please don't
Yep.
don't think that I'm saying that you shouldn't like it. That's not at all what I'm saying. But I just want to have a version of that show where Swan Queen happens because personally, for me, I think that would have made it a better show. And
I
so
think
that's
it would have
the
made
version
it the
I
best
want.
version.
I want to see.
Same. I am 100% under that as somebody who is not a Swan Queen shipper initially. So I got converted, and
I converted you.
I can't. Well, you and my sister, because then my sister was also going on about it, and then my husband was also just. He loves Regina so much, dude. Every time she pops up on the screen, he's like, God, I just love her so much. I was like, I know. He's like, do you want to script me into the reality? I was like, no, I'm not doing that. I'm not doing it. You're already in MCU. You don't need to do this. Because my husband is in my MCU DR with Yelena. So, while I'm with Loki. Yeah, that's an actual that's an actual thing.
Yelena is, I feel like she and I are gonna be BFFs. If I did ever shift to the MCU, Yelena and I would be like this.
That's right.
100%.
I love her so much.
I love her so much. She's got the best lines in all of the MCU. The best lines are all Yelena's lines.
How do you do like this? With the pose and the hair.
You're such a poser.
And just go in there and they rip it out.
Oh my gosh. What a beautiful conversation. I love it so much.
As somebody who had a hysterectomy, nothing brought me more joy than that whole conversation. I was like, I love this. This is so good. So Shifter Netflix is the ability to watch all of your DRs as TV shows, movies, whatever, as well as the best version of every TV show, movie, documentaries with footage from time and history, like dinosaurs, ancient history, as well as realities that you can imagine, like where a reality where women and men were both equal when society was being built type of things. Those are like documentaries. And then you can also watch other people's DRs, assuming you have their consent and their permission, by changing profiles. So your Shifter Netflix literally has everything there, but it's also organized with genres and profiles for other people's DRs or their ideas and stuff like that. And it basically has all of the best versions of all of those things. So if you're not sure that you actually want to experience a reality like Stranger Things or Supernatural or the MCU or things of that nature, you could watch it as on your Shifter Netflix and then either decide that you do want to. That may be enough. Like I love the 100. I don't want to shift to the 100. I would love to watch myself in the 100 though. I think that'd be a blast. So but you can do all of those things, and then also I think that would also help people with scripting, because then if you watch something in the MCU and you see what happens to yourself in that reality and you're like, wow, that's really rough, maybe I want to change things. Now you have that, you can now change it. Just like if you're watching it on, like, as you're scripting here, you now have that ability to script different things and change it so that it's a more comfortable reality for you to actually go and experience firsthand. And that is our
I actually wanted to add something because I had another idea as we were sitting here of something to be on Shifter Netflix, which is going back and just looking at your own memories.
Yeah, which
there are things which is sort of related to watching your DR as a movie, but I mean specifically, like, I want to see if there are things from my childhood that I've forgotten that I might want to remember.
as somebody with extreme childhood trauma who has the majority of 8 years old to about 15 and a half completely blacked out, I only have specific little things and their stories that have been repeated over and over. I would like that in order to be able to heal those, but I kind of considered that in the like
Mm,
watching your DRs, because this reality at its core is just another reality that you are
hmm.
experiencing. It's no different than a DR, but that's probably just me having that mindset and not having spoken that until just now. So, but no, I 100% agree. You should be able to watch your memories. I actually have something to add that we didn't mention about our waiting rooms at all. That's actually extremely important.
Yeah.
And that's having a therapy part of your waiting room. So that way you have a therapist that is there, that knows about shifting, that can help you heal not only from this reality, but any reality you go to. So if you go to the MCU and you have something really traumatic happen to you, you can go to your therapy part of your waiting room and get therapy for that. So that when you come back here, it doesn't hit you as hard. Because as people say everywhere, you can script out trauma, but you can't script out trauma that you're gonna bring it back here. You
Probably. Yeah.
most likely.
And like
So
I do have a therapist in this reality that knows about shifting, so I
mhm,
don't really need that in my waiting room, although I'm kind of curious about like maybe I could have Deanna Troy as a therapist and that would be really cool, but not everybody has that.
mhm.
And also, not everybody can afford therapy in
Yeah,
this
I
reality. And
can't.
I personally think that everyone should be in therapy because I think having a space where you just have the space to process with
Mhm,
somebody who is trained to help you process, because that's basically what therapy is, at least for me, at least with talk therapy. It's basically I'm processing externally and the other person is just giving me space and like maybe helping me understand things if I need help understanding things. But often for me, I'm just talking at them and they're just sitting there going, yes, and I'm just doing it all myself. But I think that that is really useful. And, but not everyone can afford that. And
mhm.
so having that in another reality, I think is also really important as well.
Yep, my waiting room has because like I can't afford therapy here.
And not all
I
therapists here are good.
No, I've
That's the
only
other
had
thing. And not all
horrible.
therapists here know about or are supportive of shifting. So that's the
Yep.
other thing.
So in my waiting room specifically, I have a therapy room just because like everything on my DR is just like you open a door and now there's this extra thing. So they're just you open a door, you get what you want. So I have a therapy part of my waiting room. So that way, if anything traumatic happens to me in a DR and I'm shifting back before I ever come back to my current reality, I'll go to my therapy part of my waiting room first. So that way I get help for all of those things. So when I come back here, it'll be a lot easier to handle and process. And then that way I can also heal from a lot of the trauma and stuff that I have here. So
Yeah.
waiting rooms can be extremely useful. You can literally use them for
Yeah.
just about anything that you want or need. You can make it as fantastical and whimsical and as practical as you want. And the way that all of that made the most sense to me was them being little pocket dimensions. Like your
Yeah.
consciousness knows what you want and you need, and you just get to have that because you know
Yeah.
about shifting. Like you just get that now.
Something else
Congratulations.
that you can get from waiting rooms that I forgot to talk about that is something I have in my base reality is learning new skills. Like
Yes.
I am so excited to learn different languages. I'm also really because again, I want to do experimenting. I want to learn other languages, particularly languages that I haven't learned here because like I learned French but I don't remember any of it. So I want to try learning languages that I've never learned anything about here and then see if it's accurate when I come back. That's an experiment I want to do because I'm like
Yeah.
I like that would be mind blowing. So but also just for me, also a space to do creative projects that I don't
Yes.
have the time, energy, or resources to do here. Cause I'm a choreographer. There's like lots of things that go on in my head. I want to be a writer, but my ADHD, I don't have the attention span. I think what happens for me is I have the ideas in my head and then I don't have the patience for actually writing it down because I've already thought of it, which means my brain has already moved on to the next thing. And then I don't have the energy to like go back and write down the thing that I've already thought of. So in this waiting room, basically the things just appear in type or in print as soon as I think of it
Yep.
so that I don't have to go through the taking it from thought to physical form, because sometimes my ADHD just can't do that. And then also, like, sometimes I have choreography ideas, but I need other bodies, and I just
Mhm.
don't have, you have to find people who can dance and who want to dance and whose schedules align with you, and you have to find enough people, and you have to find people who have the right kind of technique or have the ability to do the specific thing that you want them to do, whatever. Maybe you need someone, like, dancers move in all kinds of different ways, and maybe I want looking for like a particular energy in the dance. Like, like for me, I'm a very like, my dancing very much looks like I'm moving through water. I have like this very sort of like slow, and then I know dancers that are like much more floppy, so like different strengths. And I don't always have access to what I want or need to for the thing that's in my head. So that's another thing I've got in this reality, is I've just got all the resources that I need to create the thing that I'm trying to create in my head, so that I can
Yeah.
actually create. Because it's so frustrating to me to have all these creative ideas in my head and I can't do anything about them.
Mhm.
So, like, writing songs, whatever, or, you know, I want to write music, but I don't play a lot of instruments. And so learning instruments in another reality,
Yeah.
is something, especially because I really want to learn to play the duduk, which is an Armenian instrument. And finding a duduk teacher
Yeah.
is
I
just, I don't even know how I would begin to do that. Not to mention the fact that the duduk I managed to get my hands on is too big for
for
my
you.
hands. I
Yeah.
can't reach all the holes on it because I have tiny hands. So things like that, learning new skills, creating things, there's just so many possibilities. Another thing I might want to do is try out potential career paths, which wouldn't be in my base reality. It would be a different DR or waiting room or whatever. But I want to be like, okay, I kind of like, maybe I want to be a musician, but what would that actually be like?
Yeah.
You know? Because in this reality, you make the decision, it's a lot harder to backtrack once you've already started establishing a career. So going to different waiting rooms or pocket dimensions to try out different things and see if you actually enjoy those things,
Yeah.
and even maybe learning some of the skills that would help you do that in this reality or whatever reality you want to do it in, right? I think is I'm just so excited about all the different possibilities that exist with shifting and with waiting rooms. And
I would say I have the multiverse library because we talked about Shift or
ah,
Netflix. That's why I did the weird things
yes,
when I
I
was
have that
explaining it,
too.
because I was
I
like,
actually thought of this
I feel
idea
like I
with
need.
books before I thought about
Me
it with
too.
movies.
I did
Yeah.
too. I did too. So it's the multiverse library. So you have the best version of the best books that were actually written and completed, because I've got some beef with some books. Okay. And I've got some book series like the Night World series, you guys. I don't know if anybody ever read the Night World series. This is by the same person who wrote Vampire Diaries, LJ Smith. They're amazing. She had this really cool concept. It's the soulmate principle. I love the Night World series. It never got finished. They fired her and we never got the last book. The
Sorry.
last book was a fan fiction type book, and no, it's not the same thing. And it was this whole thing that was built up over 3 books, with each part of each book being a different character, different parts of the world that were all going to conglomerate in this last book that never got finished. I will
That's so
finish that
frustrating.
in my This is the first
I
thing I'm
love
doing in my
that.
multiverse library, because then I want to know if I need a Night World DR, because Night World, so cool. Anyways, but yeah, so you have the multiverse
Yeah.
library. So the best version of all of the books, all the series were actually finished. And then also, as somebody who has been a writer, like my everybody thought I was going to be an author. Like, that was growing up what everybody told me I was going to do. I wanted to be a marine biologist. Everybody told me I was going to be an author. And I have all these amazing, really well fleshed out ideas that got lost over the years in computers that black
Mm.
screened, and
I
like
hate when that
literally.
happens.
And it's happened with every single one, to the point where I just gave up. And I gave up on all these ideas, and I'm like, I'll revisit them at some point and it's going to be completely different. But my ideas are all going to be in the multiverse library. So I can actually read them, see what they were like, and then I can come back here and write them and finish them
I
finally.
love that. Side note, another thing that exists in my Shifter Netflix are videos that I lost in this reality, particularly videos of me dancing
Oh,
that,
that's such a good
because
idea. That's
I
a
I
really good
had I
idea.
had an external hard drive that died, and I lost all the footage that was on there, including some like really cool choreography projects I did in college that I really want to be able to watch again. And also dance performances that I did when I was a kid that I only
Yeah.
have dance performances, I think, from the time I was like 12, but there were performances from that I did when I was younger that I never have recordings for. And I want to go back and watch those so I can remember what that choreography was. And also again, so much of this is like dancer based because I'm a dancer, right? But I want to not only see these performances but recordings of these performances where everything went perfectly, and
Yeah.
sometimes they don't, everything goes perfectly and it's shot from all the best angles and captures all the best moments, because sometimes the videographers, especially if they don't, like when I record dance,
Hmm.
I go to most of the rehearsals so that I know what all the best parts are to film and from which angles, so that when I actually do the recording, I know exactly where to be at what time. But not all videographers have the time to, or energy to do that. So, and then like there was this one performance where they were like, we're not going to let you record your child for this performance because we've hired someone professionally to do it this time. But then the professional videographer didn't know how to film dance, and they basically
Mm.
zoomed in and panned slowly from
Ugh,
one side of the stage to the other. And I'm like, look, if the video that you're making is for the parents to be able to have close-ups of their children dancing, then yes, this makes sense. But not all the kids in these performances are 3. Some of them are 17, and we're the ones who want the recordings, not our parents. And I don't need a close up of what I'm doing. I know what I'm doing. I want to see the recording because I want to see how the dance came together as a whole, which is something you can't see from the inside. And
yeah.
you can't see that if you're zooming in and panning slowly from one side to the other. So, anyway, that's my little rant about that. But yeah. And then the other thing is I've scripted that I can read and I like don't get bored with reading, because I have
Yeah.
all these series that have books upon books upon books upon books, especially with like graphic novels that just have lots of them.
Yeah.
And I always want, and this is true for TV shows too, basically that I'm able to stick with something and not get bored with it. And I'm excited about it and I can actually complete it. Books, TV shows, video games. I have so many video
Yeah.
games that I
Oh
never
my gosh, I
completed
can't
because I
wait to
don't
play
have the
video
attention
games.
span. So basically, I've scripted that I can keep my attention span until I finish a thing and enjoy it every step of the way and not feel like I'm getting bored with it or like it's getting stressful for me. Just can complete the thing. And also that I learn quickly and easily. So that's another thing too.
I'm about to say
Just,
I throw that I can learn quickly and easily,
yep.
like in everything always.
Yep, because learning languages especially is really difficult for me.
Same.
So, like I say, I want to go learn a bunch of languages, but I need to be able to just like, I've seen the vocabulary and now I know it like the back of my hand. I don't need to do the trying to find mnemonics to remember what things mean.
Agreed.
Like I just know it.
I'm just naturally gifted at everything. As soon as I look at it, I'm like, oh yeah, that totally makes sense. Next.
I mean, I still want to actually go through the process of learning it. I just want the process of learning to
To eat,
be
not be hard.
to not be painful. Yes, basically. And for
Uh,
it to stick, because again, with ADHD, I learn the thing and then I don't have the ability to pull up the information when I need it,
Me.
which doesn't mean I don't know it. I still know it. I just can't access it.
Yep.
So that's a that's a thing in my waiting room. I will actually be able to access the information that I learn.
I'm really, really excited about the ideas of waiting rooms, and I'm really
Me
excited to
too.
see, like, once we've shifted to a waiting room and come back, I'm interested to see how they work and if our opinions change. Because again, like neither of us have shifted to a waiting room yet, so I'm very interested to see when we've done that and come back what we come back with. You know,
Yeah.
like what was the what we was the way we thought it would be, what was different, if things worked a
Hmm.
different way, if our opinions have changed on it. Like you know, like I'm really excited to do all of the experiments in order to come back and compare our opinions now versus what they are once we've been there, and see how right we were or how wrong we were about certain things.
Yeah.
So
So I think that's probably a good place to end. I think
I think it's
we've
a great place to end.
said everything I can think of that we could
Mhm.
say for now on waiting rooms and base reality and shifter Netflix.
Yeah, I agree.
So yeah, so thanks for watching. This was episode 4, I think,
Yep.
and we will see you next time. I have this really cool thing that I've scripted into my Harry Potter DR, which is that, and I love this because I really want to be a vegetarian, but I enjoy eating meat. And so my brilliant idea for Harry Potter is because you can transfigure things into food, right? Then they can have meats that was never actually alive. It can have the taste and the texture and be exactly like meat, but it won't actually be a real animal that was harmed in any way.
My whole brain just exploded. That is the best
Right?
idea I've ever heard of.
Right? So wizards are all technically vegetarians in the sense that they don't eat things that were once alive, but they still eat things that taste like those same things, but nothing was harmed in the process.
I'm actually really obsessed with that. I can't believe you came up with that idea. Genius. Genius. Because
Thank
that is
you.
my ideal way of having a diet.
So I just wanted to mention that before I forgot.